Welcome back to the Fix the Money podcast. I'm connected now to Douglas Bakkum in Switzerland, Zurich, right?
Yeah, just outside of Zurich. Nice to be here, Niko.
I thank you for being here, Douglas. Thank you for taking the time. You're of course one of the co-founders and the CEO of ShiftCrypto, the makers of the Bitbox hardware wallet. And if you already want to get one, you can use our code Fix the Money to get some money off your purchase. I can only tell you that it's a good idea. I own all three big hardware wallets. I like yours the most. I'm going to say it right now, and I would say this even if we were not working together. Douglas, when I Google you, it's all about neuroscience and other stuff that I do not understand. I mean, professionally, where do you come from, and how do you get to Bitcoin?
Yeah, that was my past life. I actually have a PhD in neuroscience, neuroengineering, technically, and so yeah, I have a lot of papers written. Had a little bit of popularity there. Also, did some interesting bio art through my PhD also. So I got a bit of press in the past because of that. Um, but actually, where do I come from? So from Wisconsin in the United States originally. Have a technical background, so I actually studied not neuroscience but mechanical engineering. Um, was interested in continuing my studies, basically to avoid the real world. So I went to grad school and studied some artificial intelligence, robotics. I thought that artificial intelligence was really, really primitive at the time. There's a lot to be learned. So I switched to get a PhD in real intelligence. So to study neurons and how networks of neurons can communicate with each other, how that can lead to learning and memory. And yeah, that led me around the world. I had a postdoc in Tokyo, in Japan, for a couple of years, where I started collaborating with a laboratory at ETH Zurich in Switzerland, so ETH Zurich. It's the name of the university. It's not has nothing to do with Ethereum.
We have to put this disclaimer on there,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah,
it is one of the most prestigious universities in Europe.
yeah. I've been to a lot of universities, and I think it's top of the line for sure in the whole world. Um, and yeah, and I was a group leader there, doing some more research, and then I made a big jump out of academia after being in academia my whole life to jump into uh, business, entrepreneurship, and Bitcoin.
How? I mean, people will probably know how because I think Bitcoin just brings out the entrepreneur in you, right? But yeah, so can you tell us about this, because this is many people think about getting into the Bitcoin business.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, an interesting side fact is actually our company was a spin-off of a neuroscience lab at ETH Zurich. But we'll get
Interesting.
into that. So yeah, I mean, there's a couple of angles. One is like the technology transfer, why we're a spin-off, and then the other was just personal. So the next stage in the academic career would be to be a professor, and I wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do. And just looking at the startup world and academic world, um, to take the next step, you need a really good idea. You need to convince people that you have a good idea. You need to convince people to give you money for that idea. You need to convince people to work for you for that idea, to join the lab or join the startup company. And so it felt like there's a lot of parallels there. But in the end, the upside and freedom with a startup is quite significantly higher. Whereas in academia, um, yeah, you still have a boss. You still have the university telling you to do things, teaching, which yeah, maybe it's fun, administrative stuff, things like that. And so yeah, I thought, okay, let's go see what this other world is like and give it a shot. And in general, I've always been interested in. Probably everyone is interested in things that they think are important. So things that can change the world. And I think studying the brain, um, intelligence, how intelligence works, that's definitely something that can change the world and is changing the world. And I think also, Bitcoin, after I learned about it, I think can immensely change the world also. And so I heard about it during while in academia, of course, and yeah, decided to take the jump. And why a startup? I guess it's because I didn't think anyone would give me a job with my background.
But
And so
but with your but with your background, you could probably walk into Silicon Valley and get a job within like before lunchtime, right?
I don't know, maybe. Well, I didn't know, so I thought, okay, what's the best way to get involved is try to make a startup company, give myself a job, and that's what I did.
You seem to be somebody who gets to the point very quickly because you jumped like many Bitcoiners will talk 2 hours about how they found Bitcoin, and you just said, I heard about Bitcoin, and then I literally decided to take the plunge a minute later. I want to know a bit more about that, especially with your background. I mean, how did you find Bitcoin? Was it in any form connected to your background in neuroscience? Was it just a private thing?
I don't think there's that big of a connection, although I did mention before that we were a spin-off of the lab there. Um, the lab I was in is a neuroengineering lab, and so what they focused on was creating new technology that can better study neurons. Um, and I had a technical background, so I could contribute, but I was mainly doing neuroscience experiments, like using this technology. But I learned a bit about it, and so that technology was creating actually custom electronic circuits, like ASICs, that we would grow neurons on top of. And so these ASICs had like 10,000 electrodes inside. And so neurons, one way they communicate is with electricity. So with electrodes, you can listen to their conversation. You can also send a voltage stimulus, say something back. And so, anyways, I had some experience with like microcontrollers, PCB boards, programming them, um, building hardware, things like that. And that was how the technology transfer carried over, and we became a spinoff. But so that side note aside, how I got in was actually I was visiting Japan again. I think it was in 2013. And on the front page of a Japanese newspaper in really big letters was Bitcoin. That's the first time I ever saw the word. Um, and I just thought that was so strange. 'Cause in Japan, they're pretty conservative. It's a conservative newspaper, and they have this like monopoly money on the front page. That just felt so strange. So I immediately just started researching it. And a day or two, it didn't take me long until I actually saw the value in it. And the thing that really attracted me, coming from a scientific background, was the scientific aspects of it, and that is the what's commonly called solving the Byzantine generals problem. So this unsolved, up to that point, problem in computer science field of how to trust generals in a war, if you have them spread out in a decentralized way, how to trust the communication of the foot messengers. And how that applies to money on the internet is, how do you trust that someone who sends you money is not sending the exact same money to someone else, the double spend problem. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I didn't know if Bitcoin is the solution or not, but I knew that this concept of solving this problem was going to be immensely powerful. It showed the first way where you could actually put money on the internet in a way that it's going to work. And we have all the, decentralized, trustless, permissionless things coming out of it.
So did you immediately realize that this is going to basically change the world? And I'm saying this because as a scientist, did you realize that this changes how we transact on the internet, like on the base layer? Because I think that economists are still very challenged with understanding this. So I wonder if you saw this immediately just because you came from a different perspective.
Yeah, possibly. So for me, it was pretty quick. Uh, and, it was more of a gut feeling because I didn't understand exactly how it would change things. But, the existence of the internet, information being shared on the internet, it changed the world in fundamental ways. And so if you can add money onto that, which is really one of the fundamental aspects of society, and communication with people, financial communication. I didn't know how, but I thought, yeah, this is going to change the world too.
How did you turn your spin-off into a Bitcoin hardware wallet company?
Yeah, so it started off as a Bitcoin hardware wallet company.
Okay.
So in my spare time, I started getting involved in exploring Bitcoin. I think one of the first things I tried to do was make some arbitrage bots, trading bots. I quickly learned that you're not going to make any money on that unless you really do it full time. And played around with it a bit more. When I started buying some Bitcoin, also having a bit of a technical background, I understood the security issues. Like you just should not have your private keys on your computer or your phone. And so it took me a good 2 weeks until I was actually comfortable with a setup that I felt would be safe. And so some offline computer, throwing Electrum on it, and so on and so on. And I was thinking, okay, for this to ever, work, there's a whole lot of improvements needed in the usability. And at the time, this concept of a hardware wallet existed, but there was none on the market. And the hardware wallet is basically a way to make offline storage simple. So doing this whole offline computer, put Electrum on it, just take all of that and make it really, really simple. And so a hardware wallet is basically a miniature computer. It's running its own dedicated code on it to deal with specifically Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And also at the time, there was a lot of scams going on in the hardware space. So specifically with mining equipment, where you can make a lot of money mining Bitcoin. And so there's a huge demand for mining equipment. And so there'd be these pre-sales, or you send in money and they make a big batch order. But a lot of these ended up in being scams where they just run away with your money. And so that, combined with the concept of hardware wallets, but not on the market, I just decided to make my own. And that was more successful than trying to run trading bots. And I showed it off at some meetups in Zurich, here in Zurich. There's a pretty good Bitcoin community in Switzerland, fortunately enough. And I met my co-founder, who happened to live in the same city as me, Jonas Schnelli, who also happened to be one of the most important people in the Bitcoin space, one of the core maintainers, now since retired.
He retired. He retired recently, right?
Exactly, but a year or two ago.
Is he Swiss, right?
He's Swiss.
Because he has the most Swiss name imaginable.
Yeah, he's very Swiss. And we started a company. We have the Bitbox 02 out now. We started with the Bitbox 01 back then. And basically our whole marketing was a post on Reddit, a blog, just a post on Reddit, say, hey, here's this thing. And and we got some traction, and slowly started to build it up.
Well, you have some traction now. I think there are 3 big hardware wallet companies out there who compete for market share. You are very, very successful within the German-speaking world, I'd say. I mean, within the German-speaking world, when you talk about a hardware wallet, you talk about a Bitbox. It's even the rappers are using the Bitbox as a reference without getting paid for it. They just do it because that's just what you use. And I have to say, like I said, I started out with a Trezor. Nothing wrong, or maybe there's something wrong with the Trezor. We don't want to jump ahead here, but nothing really wrong with that. Ledger, I also used that. Didn't really vibe with me for some reason. But your product, especially the Bitbox only product, easy cheesy. You just put it into the laptop. I personally think the design idea with the USB-C, because everybody has a MacBook, right? With the USB-C worked really well. But I do want to get back to your story first before we talk about where Shift is going. so you have this scientist background, and you get it really quickly, right? And you know about computers, and you know about how to do it. I'm just a journalist. I talk to economists, so they're not like real scientists, and everybody has different opinions. It took me not 2 weeks to get comfortable with Bitcoin. It took me 7 years. Everybody has their time. Um, why, for the people who are still, in their process, why is self-storage so important? And do you think people are starting to get it now with all the scams and bank problems going on?
Yeah. So, I mean, the common saying you'll hear is not your keys, not your coins. And that's really true. I think one thing new people really don't understand is that you know some of the properties of Bitcoin were like gone is gone. So if someone gets a hold of your keys, they can take your coins and you can't do anything about it. And so there needs to be a whole new level of security built to handle that. I think the security level of like bank grade security is not enough. So like security on ATM cards is not enough for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies because gone is gone. Um, and yeah, there needs to be a whole new level there. And when it comes to where to keep your coins, I guess that's maybe what you're hinting at. A lot of people have their coins on exchanges. Some people have coins on, what's called hot wallet, so a wallet on your computer or your phone. And we do see a growing awareness of the importance of not doing either of those things, but keeping your keys on a hardware wallet, which I think is widely considered to be the safest way to store your keys. And so for exchanges, yeah. So last year, big in the news, FTX collapsing. They owe a lot of people Bitcoin, but on their balance sheets, at least at the time, they said, yeah, there's no Bitcoin. So it was all an IOU. And, before that, some of these lending institutes like Celsius and so on also um, basically going bankrupt. And FTX was fraud. But there's also things like in Canada, a popular story where the Canadian exchange, the owner disappeared in India.
Quadriga, right? There's a fascinating, I think it's a Netflix documentary on that. And it's, yeah. There's an absolutely fascinating documentary on the Quadriga story, because to this day, we don't know really what happened. I'll send you the link, and I'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah. And so, but the short story there is he was the only one with the keys to the exchange wallets, and everyone's funds got locked. So, if you have your coins on an exchange, there's the counterparty risk that you have to trust the exchange. And quite dramatically, quite quickly, these things can just go under, and you're out of luck. And, I mean, the same thing happened to me, with Mount Gox a long time ago. And when FTX happened, also interestingly, January 3rd, what's the name of that day? Proof of I always forget that.
Proof of keys. Proof of keys. Yeah.
So on those days, those were some of our highest selling days. We saw spikes in sales, and so it's people coming. Maybe people understand it logically in their brain that okay, yeah, I shouldn't have my coins there, but emotionally feeling it happens when you see this happen. These exchanges go under, and you realize, oh, it's real. It can affect me, and so what we see is a growing awareness in the community that hardware wallets are important. We also even see the CEOs of exchanges even promoting self custody as Coinbase CEO, Binance CEO. They both have tweets about that self custody is probably the way to go in the future.
Kraken, Jesse Powell did the same thing, especially around the trucking incident, the incident with the truckers in Canada, right? Do we believe this? I mean, technically, it's very important to say that before Bitcoin, self custody of your money was not that simple, right? You had gold maybe, and you had cash. And cash, you can self custody cash, yes, but it can also be debased by the government. It can just be declared null by the government. We had that in India, so that's also so it wasn't really possible. And then you have different attack vectors, but they were stolen, right? And FTX, they acted like they had the Bitcoin, but actually they were just making stuff up as they went along, right?
Doing what typically happens in the fiat world.
Exactly.
But with Bitcoin, you get caught.
This is important. This is important for the economists listening, yes, because I don't think it's sure that under Bitcoin we won't see credit, right? We will see credit. We will see money creation. We will see people basically making up their own money. I think if you look at altcoins, this is already happening, and when you look at the exchanges, it's already happening. But like you said, they get caught. That's the important thing. And for a person like me, who is just a normal person, there's no real reason not to go into self-custody. But, and I see this a lot, taking self-custody and taking responsibility about of your money really scares people. So it scares me, and I do Bitcoin 24/7. So my solution is I work in the Bitcoin space. So if I fuck up, I still have a connection to Bitcoin because it scares me. It really still scares me. Do you think that how do we take the fear? How do we make it easier? Where is self custody going in the future? Is there a vision for ShiftCrypto?
Yeah, great questions. Of course, we have ideas. I wish we knew what the right answer is. But what our vision has been from the very beginning is to, of course, make it as secure as possible. I think we do a great job there. But also equally important, if not more so, is to make it as easy as possible. And so that's been a design criteria since day one. And then there's a lot of education that goes around it. But with the Bitbox O2, for example, like you said before, it's just you plug it in and there you go. You really don't have to think too much about it. And so I think there's a fear, first of all, of it's a new technology, or hesitation is maybe the more right word. It's new technology. People don't understand it exactly, what they're supposed to do, things like that. And so there's a hesitation to get involved because they think it's complicated. But I think it's actually quite simple. I remember making my first online purchase with Bitcoin. I probably bought a Trezor wallet in 2014 or something.
That was also my first
in 2014 or something like that. Yeah, I was so surprised how easy it was compared to doing a credit card. You just plug it in and there it's done. With like a credit card, there's always a problem, and there's like the second factor stuff, or behavioral analysis where they want you to do all this stuff, and it sometimes just doesn't work. And it was just so simple. And I think with the Bitbox also, we want to make it as simple as possible. And so you just plug it in. It's just we try to make it intuitive to use. A thing we hear a lot is people get confused on how to get involved, just how to buy. And so we recently made a partnership with Pocket Bitcoin, another Swiss company, where inside of our own app you can buy Bitcoin at a click of a button, and also importantly in a non KYC or KYC light kind of way, where all you need is an IBAN, like a European or Swiss bank account. You don't have to be European, you don't have to be Swiss. You just need an IBAN, which you can get with like Revolut pretty easily these days. And then you can buy up to about 900 euros per day with no KYC, no extra KYC. which is a great way for people just to start getting involved. So you can, yeah, if you want to get involved, you can buy a Bitbox, and then you already have your Bitcoin on ramp.
I think this is extremely important. Do you already have do you have any numbers about how people are using this? Are people accepting this feature?
Yeah, I mean, it's only been out for a month or two, so the data is new, but we get a lot of positive feedback on it, and I think it's a really great service. It's yeah, one of the best ways to do like
I have to say
near anonymous.
I haven't looked into this. I haven't used this. I have to admit. But I have I had this situation the other day. So I went actually I went to Switzerland 2 weeks ago. I was at the Swiss Bitcoin conference in Kreuzlingen am Bodensee, and Switzerland for me is interesting as a Bitcoin country because I mean, you meet all these, Austrian economists, these anarchists, these people who, don't want the state meddle in their affairs. And then they meet up in the country that has probably one of the best states in the world, that actually works in most ways. And actually, with Swiss people, you always have this feeling that they feel a connection to their politics and their responsibility there, right? As opposed to people in Austria who basically have given up, just say, okay, up there, the corrupt people do what they want and we do what we want and that's it, Why do you think still Bitcoin has such a huge footprint in Switzerland yet today?
I don't know.
But that's the
I'm
better
not Swiss, so I have to speak from an outsider perspective. But yeah, I have to. Yeah, maybe I have to back you up that I'm amazed that politics and government can actually kind of work. That's such a revelation to me. Somehow it's efficient, cost effective. Yeah, it's kind of pretty special. And some things I've been told is Bitcoin, like the ideals of it, kind of match some of the fundamental ideals for the Swiss culture, in the sense of being, it's a mountain country, so everyone wants to be independent, self-sufficient. First of all, it is, there's lots of cantons around, so it is a bit of a decentralized kind of government. They have referendums where the public goes and votes, and people can bring that up. And so, in a lot of ways, it is kind of like a decentralized mindset, which is a good match for what Bitcoin is, and decentralized, privacy focused. Swiss traditionally care a lot about privacy. Um, People's individual rights, and so on. So there's a lot of parallels there. And an interesting thing, they also even have alternative currencies. Rika is the name of an alternative currency, which is a private money that's accepted at gas stations and other places in Switzerland. So this concept of alternative monies is also
Do you
predating
think? I
Bitcoin
mean,
here.
politically, we see two things politically right now. We see small countries slowly adopting Bitcoin. We have seen Liechtenstein, which is a tiny country between Switzerland and Austria. They're now accepting Bitcoin for taxes. Then there is at least parts of Switzerland that are also accepting Bitcoin for taxes. We've heard about the Kingdom of Bhutan mining Bitcoin for years. A crazy story. But all, and of course El Salvador, but like small countries. At the same time, we see the EU, the US, the Chinese, all pushing against Bitcoin. So what are you looking at there? What's the plan from your perspective for Bitcoin internationally?
The
But basically,
global
the
macroeconomic
question would
plan for
be:
Bitcoin.
is it enough if small countries adopt it while big countries try to stop it?
I see. Um, I mean, you have to start somewhere, right? And I think Bitcoin in a lot of
Hmm.
ways is kind of unstoppable also. And so, you know, in the past, it's not new where countries are trying to stop Bitcoin. You know, China has banned
Every
Bitcoin, I
other
don't know,
week. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
banned like five, five times, 10 times. Um, and it still keeps ticking along, you know, and if different countries, like if America bans it, it's still going to keep ticking along. And the thing about America also is it's also a bit decentralized where states do have power. Maybe not to the same balance as in Switzerland, um, between the cantons and the government. But you know there are places in America too, Texas namely, but a lot of other places where they are pro Bitcoin. And I saw North Carolina recently made passed a law, I believe, where they banned CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, from their state. You know, and
Passed it, no?
yeah, it's interesting, and I think you know these smaller countries can also be good test beds and use cases to show others that you know what's possible, what can work, what cannot work, and I think yeah, it's a bit inevitable that you know it's designed it can't go away, you know, so no matter what countries do, it can't really go away. And so, you know, if there's some pushback in the short term, you know, eventually that's just going to
It
be
it also
overcome.
it also fits together with the idea of the sovereign individual, and because I think I have to do a video about this because
Hmm.
Liechtenstein actually, I mean, even
Yeah.
the king, I think or the duke, I don't know what his name is, but he wrote a whole book about like the state in the 21st century, how the state is supposed to act in a world of sovereign individuals. I think he read the original book and then so they understand.
Yeah.
So obviously the small country would come first, but I also will soon publish like a message to Americans because I think Americans are the ones who need to adopt Bitcoin in order for the rest of the world to follow. And I actually think that it's one of the best ideas to even compete with China. Basically, it's one of the best ideas to beat China and have another 100 years of American supremacy, basically. And it's not the worst thing in the world. I speak English. I watch Apple TV. It's fine, you know. And it's interesting to see North Carolina, like not a single state in the U.S. has a bill banning Bitcoin that already exists, but there is states have bills banning CBDCs that don't even exist yet, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your home country? Where is Bitcoin leading in the U.S.?
Yeah. Also, I haven't been there in over a decade,
Have you
so I
literally
wonder
not
how
set
much it's
foot on
changed.
American soil in
But
over a
I
decade?
would say
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
no. I've visited, but I've been living abroad for a while. Yeah. Um, and there, yeah, there are good things about America, and I think at least for me, I think this whole concept of the American spirit or the American ideal, you know, where if you really believe in something, you put in a lot of effort, yeah, you can do it and you can succeed. That's kind of like pioneer mentality. Um, I think that still exists. It definitely existed when I was there, and you know, I think people. It's set up such that there's no dictator at the top. Where you know even if someone comes in and wants to be a dictator, it's going to be really hard for them to hold on. And I think part of the American psyche as a whole is also to kind of avoid that and be you know like Switzerland, be independent, be pioneers. And I think yeah, there's a lot of people in America very interested in Bitcoin. And America is such a large country, such a large market that it really allows you know startups, you know Silicon Valley, right? It really allows startups to explode and you know really reach full potential. And so yeah, I agree with you. I think Um, there's a lot going for America in terms of its ability to position itself for a future with Bitcoin. And I completely agree with you that there's a lot of potential for tapping into that to improve America as a whole.
Absolutely. I mean, if you
Any
look at
country,
South
really.
America, if you look at Africa, I mean, one of the main problems that they have is that their financial and monetary systems are just a bit shit. I mean, if you live in a world where the
Yep.
monetary system doesn't work for you, it only works for the government, it only works for leads to corruption. You can be twice as intelligent and as bold as Jeff Bezos, you'll still not beat him to the game. You're not gonna be the next Jeff Bezos. So I hope the
Yep.
next Jeff Bezos will come from Africa and use Bitcoin. But at the same time, and I totally agree that the Americans have this pioneering spirit and have this trust in themselves and in self sovereignty that maybe the Swiss have too, but the rest of Europe not so much. Um, and but at the same time, we talked about Silicon Valley. What about the big tech giants? Why is there only one company or two companies that have adopted Bitcoin in one way or the other, MicroStrategy and Tesla? Why is Apple and Google and Facebook, why have they not embraced Bitcoin if it's such a big deal as like we think it is?
Um, Good question. I don't know. I guess it would be important to note that Facebook did try to make their own cryptocurrency. Um, uh, that eventually they ran into regulator problems to not get involved. Um, I think, yeah, you see,
Sure.
I mean, I can only speculate. One case example right now is in the banking system in America where, some the crypto banks, Signum, SVB, seems to have gotten targeted because they're really involved in crypto. And the SEC right now is really targeting lots of entities about the exchanges and others about, kind of using, yeah, vague regulatory threats to kind of tamp down on I don't know what. I don't know what their goal is. Um, and so with big companies, hard to say. Um, I think Apple just got
True.
into banking. Um, it's in the news recently where they offer a savings account with four plus percent interest compared to 0.01% interest you get in a normal bank account in America. And so yeah, maybe there's some avenue there, but yeah,
It's
I
just
really
a
couldn't
question that I
couldn't say
think
more.
we do have to ask. I mean, maybe they don't need to. Maybe it's too risky for them. I mean, it does make sense that the outliers would go for it first, like the crazy ones, like Elon Musk, yes,
Yeah,
and I think its name is David Marcus, who has been doing Libra for Facebook. He's now a Bitcoiner. I mean, it says it all, really.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, maybe it could also be just scale also. So in the grand scheme of things, I think Bitcoin cryptocurrencies are still kind of a drop in the bucket. Um, and so, yeah, if you have a big business, they're focusing on, bigger
You told me
markets.
before we
I
started, you
don't know.
told me that you just came back from Japan, where you actually found Bitcoin. But you said that information is lacking there because of the language barrier. And I want to talk about this a little bit because it relates to what I do. So
Yeah,
I do content in German and in English. Those are the two languages I can speak, right? So I can't do Japanese, but maybe somebody who can is listening to this. So what do you think is lacking, and what does it lead to in countries like Japan?
yeah. So I was in Japan for personal reasons for just over a month. Um, and while I was there, I tried to get a feel for the Bitcoin scene, and it seemed like it's just completely dead. And interestingly, Bitcoin Cash seems to have a bigger scene, and that's because Roger Ver, I believe, is based there. He organizes the Bitcoin meetups, Bitcoin Cash meetups, And what I've heard, there are some Bitcoiners there, and what I've heard is
Mm-hmm.
that the language barrier is a big issue, and so like
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin does not have a marketing department, and so a lot of the material that's out there is in English and European languages, but it just doesn't get translated into Japanese or let's say Korean, Chinese also. Uh, Whereas like Bitcoin Cash or other altcoins, they do have marketing departments and they do translate material into those countries. And so I think there's an information asymmetry in Japan and probably other similar countries where what they get exposed to is these marketing lines from altcoins and others. And of course, that's going to influence people's knowledge. It's going to influence people's decisions. And so it seems like, yeah, Japan, it's still, yeah, more so thinking of non-Bitcoin kind of things. Of course, that'll slowly change, but right now it's
I
really
think
an
this is extremely
educational kind of
important, and I
issue.
think this is something that with maybe I haven't thought about that much, but I've seen it in other countries. I've done podcasts about Turkey and about Lebanon even, and we've even seen some of it in Germany, where there is strong communities for certain altcoins. I'm not going to name any names, I think many people listening to this will know about this, but it is interesting because the network effect of English is so strong that as long as you speak English, I think you do get to the points. But I do check here, and we do have literally for fixthemoney.net. For our Substack, we do have literally one subscriber in Japan. So man, if you're listening, get in touch with us and we'll
Well,
help you set up something like this channel and others in Japan. Because that's the great thing about Bitcoiners. We help each other. We like to help each other, and it works out pretty well. Well, Douglas, thank you for your insights. Thank you for your time. When is the Bitbox 03 coming, and what can we expect? Like, do we get pink and orange colors?
yeah, a bunch of state secrets you're asking, but yeah, we are actually in the design process for a Bitbox 03. Bitbox 02 is not going to go away. Don't worry about that. But we're doing some surveys and reaching out to the community to get some feedback, which we've already started to try to form a basis of which way to go. So we have tons of ideas, but what we think is important is actually to listen to the market, listen to our customers, listen to potential new customers about their pain points. And so it touches back on what you talked about earlier about people having fear. And so we really want to solve that issue. And so we need to understand what people fear, what the pain points are. And yeah, we're going to have a new wallet coming out. Um,
Soonish,
I can't
soon
say when,
TM.
but
Right.
soonish.
So we get a Bitbox 03, and as Shift Crypto, are you going to be focused on the hardware wallet completely, or are you going to go into other, related products?
um, Yeah, so I mean, the hardware wallet's the foundation, right? It's if you look at Bitcoin, any cryptocurrency really, the foundation is a private key, and so storing that securely is the most important thing. And then part of our mission then is to provide that as a base where you don't even have to think about it. You can just be confident that uh, you're doing it the right way, and then look into making it easy for users in the other aspects. So, for example, our partnership with Pocket, where you can now buy Bitcoin inside of the app, and so try to figure out other ways where we can help people, empower people, really equip people with the tools to participate in this space. And you don't have to have a technical background. You can be anyone. Well, one thing we're really proud of is that uh, we think our hardware wallet does work for advanced people. We have a lot of advanced features, but one of the biggest feedbacks we get that makes us feel good is people say, "This is the hardware wallet I recommend to my parents or
Yes.
my girlfriend or my
Yes.
wife." And we think that's important. We want to keep doing that in every way possible.
And I can really just, especially the fact that you have a Bitcoin only hardware wallet, it's just so simple, and it's and even like the whole process of setting it up, the process of honestly, honest to God, I still struggle with the concept of doing a tutorial for the hardware wallet, because in my eyes it's just so simple and so straightforward. And any person that I ever recommended it to, they were like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna order it, and then I say, okay, you order it, and you can call me up if you need any help setting it up. Nobody ever calls. They just set it up and just put it into the laptop, and it works. And congratulations on that. I think it's we talked about you being an engineer, being a scientist, knowing how to use Bitcoin within 3 weeks. It took me 7 years, and one of the reasons is because it needed people like you to come up with products that people like me can use and feel good about it. So if anybody out there is listening or watching to this on YouTube and you don't have a hardware wallet yet, just go on ShiftCrypto, get yourself a hardware wallet, save some money using the Fix the Money code, and just feel better about it. I'm gonna give one last story. On my German channel, I had Matthias just the other week. He had a medical episode. He was actually, it was a neurological episode. So he was close to being a complete vegetable, basically, honestly to say. And the thing is that he was super lucky, because the doctors found his very rare condition very quickly, and they could help him, and now he's running marathons, so he's fine. But he told me he was lying in bed, and all he could move at this point was his head, right? And he could think and he could talk, but very slowly. It was very exhausting. And he said that the most horrible thing was that he's still young, and his wife didn't know how to deal with all his fiat things. The fiat things were, he has 2 companies. There was invoices to be paid. There was the states, like the monetary authorities for the state, the tax authorities. They wanted stuff, and he was super stressed about the fiat situation. He said, not for a second was he thinking about the Bitcoin situation, because he knew that his wife knew how to access the Bitcoin, because it was actually in the end a lot easier than all the fiat stuff.
Interesting. Yeah.
So maybe, as a message to anybody listening. Douglas, are there any other things? I mean, are we going to see you talk on conferences? Should we follow you on Twitter? Give us the send-off.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the really kind words. Appreciate it. And yeah, I'd say if you go to our website, shiftcrypto.ch, CH is for Switzerland, you can find ways to follow us on Twitter. We have a very active Telegram channel. I'm on Twitter, a little bit less active, but you can catch me there. I will be in Miami, Bitcoin conference next week already. And I'll be in Prague at the conference, and probably a few more. But if you follow us on Twitter, you'll be able to.
Excellent. Me and my partner Yaël, who is doing the English channel with me, will both be in Prague as well. So I'll see you there. I'll also put the links for Prague in the show notes, and we have a code for that as well, obviously. And Douglas, thank you so much for taking the time. All the best to you, and greetings to all the nice people at ShiftCrypto. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in Prague.
Me too. Thanks a lot, Niko.
For more content, articles, and podcasts like this, go to fixthemoney.net.